This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, I've got a fantasy football legend joining me, president of the Fantasy Sports Writers Association and ambassador of Bad Beats. It's the one and only Andy Behrens. Welcome to the show.
Oh, it is a pleasure to be here. Good to see you, my friend. I was saying it before the pod started. You're in somewhat muted attire today. Not what I imagine. Kevin when he's just sitting around the house. I picture a rather loud show. Oh, I like that.
I just want you to be comfortable, Andy. I wake up every day and I think, okay, what am I going to wear, and what is Andy Behrens going to think of this?
Yeah. As long as you know that I'm like 1,000 miles away judging you.
I love it.
Imagining what your wardrobe choices are that day.
I love it. Well, we did spend a little bit of time together this summer, FSGA and Fantasy Football Expo. Always a pleasure. It's a pleasure having you on here, fresh off of one of the most improbable victories in the history of fantasy football over CBS's Dave Richard. That was unbelievable. 109.02 to 109 or 108.98, like a 0.04 margin of victory. The matchup was over. I planned on discussing, how you're going to get off, this 1-2 start. Improbable as it can be. Jared Goff versus David Montgomery. Montgomery goes for 28 points or whatnot, and then you take the rest. So Goff, is it victory?
Honestly, you're underselling how improbable this was, and
it was so improbable.
Like, I wasn't just facing Goff. Dave had a lead, and Dave had Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I had David Montgomery in a flex spot, and again he had a lead, and so like the entire matchup, it wasn't even on my radar that I should watch this one. You kind of start of Monday night, you take a full accounting of the fantasy portfolio. You start thinking about, okay, where are the places where I need to pay attention because it might influence whether I win or lose. I wasn't even looking at stacked because I was trailing, and he had a quarterback and one of the best receivers in football. The little slider showing win probability basically had it. I don't know. It was probably understating it at like 90-10, right? And then for much of the game, it was 99-1. With a minute left in the game, it was 99% in Dave's favor. The whole thing flipped. Obviously, it flipped because David Montgomery had a supernova performance that he's going to have other good games this year, but he's not going to equal that one later this year. That was incredible. And then it flipped literally because Jared Goff took a knee on the final play and like lost a yard or two, and that flipped the matchup. And I'm confident that I have been on the wrong side of those before. I don't know that I've ever been on the winning side of one of those. And so the fact that it came down to that, and I was never in it until Montgomery scored that final touchdown. It wasn't close. It shouldn't have been close. Dave should have won. He's got a really good team, but it just goes to show you what a little bit of heart, a little bit of want to, running through the tape, playing to the whistle. That's what my teams are known for, Kevin.
Well, it shows that anything is possible in fantasy football, right? It's not over until it's over. I just think it's fun because I've been seeing your Bad Beats posts and whatnot on social media for almost probably a couple decades. I don't know.
Yeah.
And how fun, just unbelievable victory.
I believe they're actually replaying that matchup, the Dave Richard, Andy Behrens matchup on NFL Network right now. It's an instant classic.
Well, it'll go down in history in fantasy football. Definitely the greatest thing that the stacked league has ever seen. Now, obviously, we are going to talk some football. We're going to talk a little bit about that stacked league experience you're having, but just thrilled to have you back on here. Always a pleasure. So, obviously with what stacked is, it's a really loaded stacked fantasy football league competing for a massive donation to charity. It's going to be just a super competitive league, and thus far through the season, it's been super fun to watch, and I love having you guys on here sharing your experience. It's been fun.
Yeah, listen, I'm always a player for any league that has like a charitable giving component to it. I think that's great. I also think one of my favorite things about this is we all do a bunch of like industry leagues where the real point of it is we're just trying to knock out some preseason content, right? I just want to have a draft to write about. And this is different. Like I don't know, this is between week 3 and week 4, and you and I are sitting around talking about this league. I love that the idea from the start was always, hey, we're going to continue to talk about the process of managing in season, not just what did I do in my draft and how did I expect things to go and what was my roster build and like all the silly things we say. Because that's only where, I mean, that's like part of the fantasy equation, and the rest of it, the real like winning and losing happens in season. And I love that we're tracking it that way.
Yeah, it's a ton of education for people that are following along. So I love it. You can follow it at stackedfantasy.com/stacked league. A lot of fun. And these interviews are going to be great. But we also, we want to talk football too. So, you've got a kind of a new approach to the season. You got some new content out there. Can you share how everything is going with your lineup right now with content?
Yeah, it's been really fun. So Dalton Del Don and I just decided to launch our own thing over the summer. Had a bunch of conversations with a bunch of different places, and just me personally didn't have the appetite to to work for another like large mainstream fantasy platform. And Dalton and I doing our own thing has been like an absolute blast. Everything that I'm writing is, I don't know, it's the stuff that I loved. And have always enjoyed producing, and it's none of the stuff that I thought was kind of drudgery. I'm also podcasting once a week with Chris Harris, who is also in this league and has a really good team, an annoyingly good team. So Chris and I are podding together once a week and producing content together, and I'm just I'm using this season to just collaborate with, I don't know, most of my favorite people in the industry, right? And I'm just making content with people I really love and appreciate.
We gotta love that. Gotta love that. We are flying through the season. It's amazing how fast it can go. Week 3 is in the books, heading into week 4. What are your biggest surprises thus far?
Well, I mean, there's, I hate to say the thing that anybody would say, but like Daniel Jones being good, Daniel Jones being maybe a top 12, 10, 8, I don't know, rest of season quarterback. It is probably the craziest fantasy storyline this year, because we're like a month removed from talking about how, did the Colts really make the right choice here? We know Daniel Jones is cooked. Maybe this is a little better for the receivers, but we were harumphing about that decision. And, it hasn't been like the actual watching of these games. Not every Daniel Jones throw is a total gem. It's not completely clean. But he's been really good, and the design of that offense is beautiful. Like, they are scheming people open. They're drawing up some really fun things for Tyler Warren. Like, the Colts are not just like winning in a bad division. They're fun. And Daniel Jones he didn't even really get my attention off of week 1, because that was just Miami. I wasn't that dazzled by somebody putting up numbers against Miami, but when you do it against Denver, and we know that there's a dual threat component to his game, Daniel Jones has been one of the biggest revelations to me. And I realize that we've come to this point in fantasy where we just kind of expect one completely off the wall quarterback each year to have an almost random great season, and it started with Geno and Baker, and we got Sam Darnold last year, but that's not a law. That's not a rule. It doesn't have to go this way, and it's crazy that it's happening with Daniel Jones. So I think again, even though that's what almost anyone would say, that is pretty clearly the biggest surprise. I also find it a little, it's a little surprising that the Cowboys are already irrelevant and maybe done 3 weeks into the season, but I fear that's where we're at.
Well, there you go. The Bears definitely whooping them. What was your biggest takeaway on the Bears side of things after that game? Is it all just because Dallas is toast, or did you glean something to be excited for when it comes to the Bears?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say, oh, well, it was just Dallas's defense, and come on, we saw Russell Wilson, go off against them, and there's certainly truth in that. Like, Diggs isn't playing well, Dallas's defense isn't playing well, and the Bears should have put up a big number against them. but you know, on the other hand, that is an expectation that we have to have for young ascending quarterbacks if they're ever gonna reach a point where like we are really comfortable week in and week out starting them in fantasy. Like you have to demonstrate that you're a guy who, when presented with a great matchup, can have a blow up week, right? Can finish as the QB1. That is a huge hurdle, and not everybody can do it. Like, yeah, I don't know. You give Trevor Lawrence a great matchup right now. He's going to give you 185 and 1 touchdown and 1 interception. There's a lot of guys like that who aren't ready to have the kind of week that Caleb just did when presented with a friendly matchup. So that was a big hurdle. Seeing all elements of the Ben Johnson offense work, not just on an initial scripted drive, but throughout the game. That was thrilling to me. That was really exciting. Again, I know all the quality of opponent stuff. It's a pretty friendly opponent coming up this week too against the Raiders. I guess the next step for Caleb is can you consistently have, they don't have to be 4 touchdown games. They don't have to be 3 TD games. Can you consistently have usable fantasy numbers when you're just facing, not the best and not the worst defenses, right? The sort of middle of the pack defense. I don't know, the Washington type defenses, maybe the Raiders type defenses. Can you still put up numbers? Can you still be a guy who's like 250-2 against those teams? That would be really encouraging. And then, whatever expectations you had for Rome Odunze going into the season, he's obviously surpassed them. He's another guy where it hasn't been perfectly clean and there have been some drops, but that's going to go along with being somebody who's more of a downfield target, right? High yield throws, the kind of plays that he's the intended receiver on. They're not always going to work, but when they work, man, it's they are massive, like within the game. They are field flipping plays potentially. They're game changing plays, and him finding the end zone every week basically has been it's been awesome if you're a Bears fan.
It's been great. Yeah, go Huskies. I love it. How about Luther Burden? What do you think about Burden out there? I mean, obviously, maybe not every day in redraft this season, but just, as a fan from the Bears angle, what do you think of him with what you saw this last week?
I'm really excited for him long term. I think Luther Burden is one of those players where the local reporting, the things that you would have read from beat reporters, are just not in sync with like a national fantasy conversation. The Bears, unfortunately, they really love Olamide Zaccheaus, and he's got the job that, he's kind of a placeholder for Luther Burden, I think, long term, and I think Luther Burden's going to thrive in that role. But it is Zaccheaus' job right now, and they love him, and Caleb loves him. The coaches love him. Beat reporters talked about him absolutely every day during camp. He was great in the preseason. Like he's a real obstacle for Luther Burden, I think, in 2025. And even as you look at the game that Burden just had, he still played 17 snaps and he saw 3 targets, and that is and he had the kind of game that can change his playing time going forward. But it's not, that's not that kind of workload, that kind of usage. That does not make you an every week fantasy starter. You can't put up reliable, bankable numbers on that type of usage. Again, I think second half of the season, we're probably going to see more Luther Burden. I'm not entirely sure whose expense that will come at. It probably has to be Zaccheaus, but again, they love him. I regret to report that they really, really like that guy, and he's not going away anytime soon.
How about any other players across the NFL that you're excited about moving forward?
I mean, please, I'm excited about the whole damn league, Kevin. If I'm thinking about rookies who have particularly impressed me, and obviously it's been pretty up and down for the rookie running back class. Tetairoa McMillan, who hasn't even had like a signature game yet. That guy's really good, and I probably undersold him in the pre-draft process and in the run up to the NFL draft itself, because I was really enamored of Travis Hunter. Like, there were some other names in the receiver pool that I really liked. McMillan has made some plays, not just like McMillan has made plays that haven't even counted, that have been some of the best catches I've seen all year. Like he's made like one-handed grabs out of bounds again, that didn't count, that I thought were just absolute. I think he's been a revelation. I think he's been great. And, it's not going to be a surprise to anybody when he has his first 150 two touchdown game, because that guy's been really good. I also think, along the lines of players who haven't really had a huge fantasy line yet, I'm really impressed with Harold Fannin. And again, it hasn't happened for him yet. Maybe it won't happen all year because the Browns are currently stuck with Joe Flacco, and the only move they can make is Gabriel. It's not, it's not going to be good at quarterback for the Browns this year. But for that team to come out and use Fannin in the way that they did immediately in week 1, where he's in the backfield for a bunch of snaps. He's a lead blocker. He's in line. He's the X receiver. He's the slot receiver. He literally did everything. Wildcat snaps. His usage week 1 was crazy. And, it makes you look back and simply say, man, that guy is at Bowling Green, but he had the all-time receiving season in the history of the tight end position at the college level. And maybe we should have been thinking about him in the same tier as guys like Warren and Loveland.
And he's young too. I mean, he's going to have many years in the NFL. So that's exciting. Any players you're nervous about particularly?
Well, I don't know how you could watch the Bengals play last week and not be a little nervous, right? I think it's going to be okay. I mean, I'm pretty confident it's going to be okay for Jamar Chase, and we know that Jake Browning isn't quite as bad as what we saw last week. But this is, even 2 weeks ago when called upon in the game that Burrow got hurt, he also threw some nasty picks. So he hasn't been great. He was fine a couple years ago. His second half was about as good as anybody could have possibly expected. And I guess initially I thought, man, this is going to be okay for all these guys. And that offense can still be productive enough to deliver a decent season for Chase Brown and Higgins and all that. And now, I don't know, maybe it's recency bias, but I am a little bit worried that perhaps Jamar Chase is the only one who can survive this. And it's going to be really tough for everybody else. I don't know what the path is for Chase Brown, and I guess I finally made the adjustment in the ranks this week. I have him buried in the mid-20s, I think, at running back, and I don't even know if I feel that strongly about him. The line is poor. The matchups don't get easy necessarily, certainly not this week. And what's the ceiling for the offense? It looks really bad. So I'm pretty worried about all of the too big to fail fantasy assets in Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's tough break for sure. Obviously, there's been a lot of tough breaks, a lot of injuries thus far this season. How are you advising fantasy managers moving forward?
Yeah, the problem is we're coming off a week where the level of some of these injuries, it hit with guys who are irreplaceable. There's nothing anybody can tell you about how to deal with a CeeDee Lamb injury. Your team's going to be a little worse. You can't. You can hope that it's going to be a short-term thing and it's going to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I feel like that's probably the case. But there's no replacing a player at that level. You can do some things at quarterback. It's the great thing about one quarterback leagues is if Joe Burrow goes down, you can still win the thing because there are quarterbacks that emerge every season. We've already seen it. Daniel Jones was already an early season pickup. So there are ways that you can address the quarterback position. There's not that much that you could do with somebody like Mike Evans with CeeDee Lamb. So that's pretty tough. The Connor injury is so. The Connor injury is so tough because number one, very easy player to root for. Number two, a really underrated player. He's a wonderful player to watch, and his best games are just tremendous. He was having a really fun day against San Francisco. Not that it was a noisy game necessarily in the box score, but he'd broken off some nice gains in that one, from situations where you would not expect a runner to necessarily make plays. So he was having a good game, great player. But running back is a little bit easier to replace, obviously, whether it's from the waiver wire or whether you already had Benson on the roster. But that's really a tough one with guys like Lamb, with Evans. You have to just hope that they get healed up pretty quick because there's no replacing those guys. You can go out and add Trey Tucker. You can add Tyquan Thornton. There's names on the waiver wire. They're not comparable to anything that you might get from CD.
Yeah. Now, as for stacked, you mentioned how it's fun to compete for charity. Let's talk about the charity that you're competing for this season.
Oh yeah, almost every time I'm in one of these situations where I get to represent a charity, I've gone with the Greater Chicago Food Depository. My wife and I have been donating there for decades, maybe long time. They do good work. They do it very locally at a place that I've called home for a long time, for 30 plus years. To me it seems pretty non-controversial, right? They have initiatives to address hunger in a number of different ways, and food insecurity throughout the city. So it's a great cause. They spend the money well, and I've been supporting it for years.
Great. Love it. Now, obviously, we mentioned week 3, Dave Richard, that matchup. Again, it's going to go down in history. It's pretty cool to watch. I'm sure it was fun for you guys. Something you guys probably won't forget for quite some time. Dave's still sitting at the top, 2-1. And there is a last place punishment yet to be revealed in this league. And Greg Branos sitting there at 0-3 after a little rough start. But let's start at the beginning. Your roster, and
can I just say, Greg, I'm trying. I've been trying so hard to trade for a tight end with Greg, and Greg, man, let's come to the table and be reasonable. Let's make a deal that suits both of our interests. I feel like we're good trade partners here. He's got 2 pretty good tight ends. I'll take one of them. I'm not choosy, but let's make something happen.
Yeah, you are definitely trying to manage that tight end position with your roster. But talk about your roster construction from the beginning, from the 3rd spot. You took Bijan, you got JSN after that, Josh Allen after that, Kamara, DJ Moore, and then David Montgomery in the 6th spot, which obviously, week 3, that was nice to have. Is this a normal build for you?
JSN was probably my most heavily rostered player this year. So yes, when I was drafting anywhere, and I feel like I took him a little bit, maybe a little bit ahead of where the industry was taking him. I think there's a pretty good chance that we look back on draft season and that, not that I'm not being critical of Ladd McConkey. I think he's a wonderful player, but I feel like that JSN or Ladd McConkey choice is going to be one of those hinge points in drafts, and maybe that's going to go into. So far, it has certainly gone in JSN's favor. It's not like that can't flip, but JSN just looks great, and I thought he was a little bit underranked considering the situation that he was stepping into, and he was coming off a 100-catch season. I just thought he looked wonderful last year, and everything that had been promised about his usage is more or less coming to fruition. So this was a very standard build for me. If Bijan Robinson was available to me in the 1st round, I would often come back and I would get someone like JSN in the 2nd or the 3rd. Josh Allen or Lamar was something that I only did occasionally. And this is a league that is, extremely competitive, obviously, in terms of the people who are in it, but it's not so large that you can't take a shot on a potential like league tilting quarterback early in the draft. And Allen and Lamar, for me, they were a tier of 2, and if you can get one of those guys, you have a chance at getting a sort of golden ticket player at the position. So it was pretty common for me to take a shot on one of those guys in the 3rd round. If I was staring at a group of running backs or receivers where like I didn't have a strong preference, I would often take one of the quarterbacks.
Love it. Now, obviously, you mentioned the tight end position. You've been active waiver wire this week. Looks like Hunter Henry went for the highest bid. You guys have been very conservative with your bids, which has been kind of cool to see. Not a lot of money being spent, but you got Hunter Henry for $9. You outbid a couple people. You need to fill that tight end position. Talk about adding Hunter Henry to the roster.
I'm not, like we all know what Hunter Henry is, and we all know that he's not gonna give us a touchdown every week. He's a very touchdown dependent player, but I'm ready to forget this spot for a while. I'm ready to go a few weeks and just coast, and we're gonna roll Hunter Henry out there. And I feel like, I don't know, if I let this go 5 or 6 weeks, I'll probably have some games where he finds the end zone again, and it's fine, and he gives me 10 points. That's okay. I'll try to win at other spots. I really wish that I had landed Fannin early. I did bid on him, obviously didn't get him. And then I landed Sanders and felt really good about that because he looked excellent 2 weeks ago, made some tough catches in traffic, but then he gets hurt this past week. So I'm in that great tight end wasteland right now that sometimes you can fall into if you don't draft it early that would have been my other option when I was taking Josh Allen, right? Is to take one of the premium tight ends, and perhaps I should have done it. I was really bullish on Colston Loveland coming into the year. Now he's a little bit banged up, and he was a little bit underutilized early in the season, so that didn't work out, and I'm just trying to patch it together.
Yeah, obviously the next on the waiver wire, Blake Corum went, then Tyquan Thornton went for $6. Yeah, you acquired Austin. What do you think about that move?
I will also say that I put in a pretty aggressive bid on like a secondary bid on Brenton Strange. If Hunter Henry hadn't worked out for me, I was probably going to get Brenton Strange. I think I bid. I might have had him in there at like $7, $6, something like that. I think he looks fine too. That not somebody that I think can challenge, for a top 4, top 5 finish each week, but good enough to get you through a matchup. I don't imagine I'm going to be playing Austin that much. He's just, he's scored a couple times. I feel like maybe, people who don't do this for a living might not be acquainted with just what a fantastic athlete he is. For a smallish player, he can play big. He's very fast. He's got real leaping ability. He's obviously caught Aaron Rodgers' eye. So he's an interesting talent, but he's also not tied to the offense that, we necessarily want to have a ton of shares of in fantasy. So I don't think I'll be starting him in until we actually get to the bye weeks, but I think he's an interesting and very talented player.
Well, I think it's interesting. You took him for $4. Trey Tucker went for $3. 3 touchdowns got him a $3 bid. Obviously, you could have probably had either of those guys. Why did you choose him over Tucker? Or I guess let's talk about Tucker. Why didn't you add an extra buck for Tucker?
Yeah, I think I may have had a contingent bid on him too. I mean, I know, and listen, it's not that different with Tucker because he's rarely coming off the field this year. There was buzz about him during the summer. I don't feel terribly different about him, except I think he's pretty clearly coming off the best game that he's going to have this year. That doesn't mean that he can't have other really useful games. But I'd put him in the same tier basically as Austin, and I think I probably had a bid that was probably in the neighborhood of $3 on him as well. I've usually put in courtesy bids on Trey Tucker. I think he's fine. I got no problem with him. I don't think he's where Jacoby is and where Brock Bowers is in that receiving hierarchy. So he's a little bit downstream. So is Austin, but Austin is more maybe number 2 than number 3. But I think they're close.
Okay, now how about looking at just your roster as a whole? Like what players are you going to need to come through and take you to the title, and which ones are you most nervous about?
Yeah, it's very stars and scrubsy, right? Like at some point this season, I have to figure out tight end. I don't know that Hunter Henry is like, if I make it to championship week, I don't know that I want to be rolling with Hunter Henry. I don't know that that's going to feel like a satisfying answer. I need Josh Allen not just to have a top 3 fantasy season. I'm going to need Josh Allen to be the QB1 or the QB2. I'm going to need him to be great and pretty consistently great. I'm going to need JSN to keep this up. And I'm gonna need one of this group of sketchy receivers to actually step up and sort of meet their reputation. DJ Moore, I think is the player most likely to do it. Hasn't had a big game yet, but they have been trying to scheme some opportunities for him. So it's not. I don't feel like he's a forgotten man. Like they've come out in a handful of games and been very proactive about trying to get him the ball. So I'm sure there are big games out there for DJ. But I'm gonna need to have a pretty typical DJ Moore season if I'm gonna make a deep playoff run here.
Well, you got Greg Brandos right where you want him, 0-3. He's got Trey McBride and Tyler Warren, and you mentioned you're trying to get one of those tight ends. Hopefully that works out. I'm
trying, Kevin. I don't want to handle too much business like out here in public, out here in the open, but I feel like we are very well matched trade partners.
There we go. Now, obviously, week 4 is coming up for you. Kendall Valenzuela coming off her first loss. She got a really talented squad. Currently, you got projections, over her 115, 110. What are your keys to victory this week? I know that it's gonna be hard for her rooting against JSN because go Hawks, right?
Yeah, listen, it's a trap game for me, Kevin. I just hope the squad isn't looking past Kendall. But a fraudulent team, if ever there was one. No, I'm just kidding. No, she has some really fun pieces on this team. I think she's got Quentin Johnston, right?
Yep.
She's got a great matchup this week. I think she's got Bo Nix at quarterback. I could just fire it up right now. Yeah, she's got Bo Nix at quarterback, who I actively do not like in fantasy, but he's facing Cincinnati this week. That's a great spot for him. She's the team with Javonte. That was a great call. Obviously, Puka right now looking like maybe the favorite to be the wide receiver 1 overall in the season. So it's a really good squad. And, Quentin Johnston having this season, and I think now we're 3 weeks into it and the targets have been pretty consistent. And the nature of the targets have been really fun, right? Like we're getting Quentin Johnston on a bunch of shallow crossers and some, just easy in-breaking routes that he can actually catch, and he's making a bunch of noise. Like he looks good, so it's a formidable team. It's not a fraud.
Well, I personally am getting a ton of offers, in other leagues with McConkey, on the other side. So people are nervous with what Quentin Johnston's doing. So pretty cool to see. Always fun to see those stories.
I do think, just like so people can take something actionable away from this, like Lad McConkey's going to have his weeks. One of the great things about like this Keenan Allen season is it's such a throwback. He looks like the old Keenan Allen. I just want people to remember that the old Keenan Allen would typically only score like 6 or 8 touchdowns. Like Keenan Allen's not going to be a TD a week. They're still giving Lad McConkey the ball. Like give it a minute. He's going to have a bunch of good weeks. It's the nature of really good offenses, right? Like they have a bunch of options. Justin Herbert is doing a good job of keeping everybody relevant. And I think at this point you need to be patient with Lad.
Yeah, especially in Dynasty. I've seen a lot of that where people are, panic selling, but you got a bright future. Keenan Allen at some point is not going to play anymore, right? So
also like that's just not how this works. That's not how trading works. Like you can't panic sell. You can't, even if you are nervous about Lad McConkey over the balance of this season, and I'm not, but even if you are, you can't be like, I want out at any price. That's a great way to lose leagues. You're just taking a loss on your draft price.
Yeah, rarely ends well. That's for sure. Now, looking around the landscape of this league, who is the scariest team to you? What's the team that you fear the most in this fantasy league?
I think we're actually getting a Justin Boone, we're getting a Justin Boone, Dave Richard matchup this week, and those teams are good. Like that's the other thing that was so improbable about me beating Dave's team is he's loaded. Like that team is good. He's got good options at quarterback. He kind of nailed it with James Cook and with Achane. Obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown. Probably the other guy in the conversation to finish as the overall wide receiver 1 in fantasy this year. So it's a pretty loaded team, and then Justin did a bunch of things right. I think he's got Trey Benson on that roster too. He's got got some pet players that are really going off. Rome Odunze is I think on his roster. So like those are probably the 2 teams that if you ask me to pencil 2 squads into the playoffs right now, it would probably be those 2.
There you go. And Dave Richards' team was the Matthew Berry selection for the team that he thought that was going to be the best in the beginning of the year. But obviously you guys are fighting. Like
you can Matthew can be bought. Like I just wasn't willing to pay the price. That could have been there you go. I just wasn't willing to meet Matthew's price.
I love it. Now, obviously, you got some personal matchups in this league, some relationships in there. Who's the one manager you just got to beat, no matter what the matchup is? Like you just have to beat them.
Well, I need to have I can't get my doors blown off by Chris Harris. I can't have that happen because I'll hear about it for I'll literally hear about it for years. I don't need that. Like Chris still talks about, fantasy championships from like, I don't know, the 90s, the early 2000s. So I don't need to lose by 60 points to Team Harris. If I have merely a respectable showing against him, it's fine. He's also someone who, I mean, it's a house of cards team because it has McCaffrey on it, and as soon as McCaffrey gets hurt, it's doomed. But for now, it's one of those rosters. I'm actually looking at Chris's roster right now, and he kind of played the hits on this one. It's a bunch of players that we collectively, that he and I both talked about in the pre-draft process. He's got Dobbins on that team. That was a big win. Zay Flowers, that's a big win. Josh Jacobs is a pet player for both of us, and he's got him. So it's a good squad. It's probably right there with Dave and Justin in my view. So I just can't get trucked by Chris.
I love it. Well, it's been fun to kind of watch this unfold. Many more weeks ahead, but the season does go by fast, so it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun journey, fun ride. Last opportunity to send a little trash talk to anybody out there. Do you want to take that opportunity, or are you good at this point?
I almost took that opportunity with Kendall, and then I walked it back, being reasonable. I will say, I think this is the first time that I've been in a league with Daigle in which he has good running backs. Like, what is that? I thought I knew Daigle's brand, and now all of a sudden Daigle is like the running back guy. He's like the old school 1995 drafter. I never saw it coming. Like Daigle is the first 7 picks or wide receivers kind of guy. I thought he was a trendy young fantasy analyst who managed that way, but it turns out there's a little bit of a little old school fantasy manager in him.
There you go, mixing it up. I love it. Can you share with the listeners and viewers what your schedule is and where they can find you?
Yeah, they can find us at the Deep Shot, thedeepshot.com. That's where I've got waiver wire recommendations up right now. We're writing some fun, non-traditional things on occasion, but the ranks are always free, and I would urge people to subscribe. If you subscribe, you get all the content at the Deep Shot. You also get the Yacht Club podcast with me and Chris Harris, which has been really fun. And you're invited into a Discord community that has just been an absolute riot. It's like a pageant in there. It's crazy. I've really enjoyed it. The whole experience has been great so far this season.
Yeah, the Harris football followers are a unique tribe for sure.
They really are. They really are.
Now, obviously, it's good to follow Andy everywhere. Keep up to everything he's doing. If you want to follow Stacked, make sure, again, you're following stackedfantasy.com/Stacked League. Thank you so much for joining me, Andy. It was so much fun. Best of luck moving forward.
Oh, thanks, man. It's awesome catching up with you.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.